Give everybody a second to get in here. All right, man, this is Clay Edwards, and we have revived the SaveJXN Podcast. This is not a Clay Edwards show. This is the mothership, the show that started it all here on the SaveJXN platform. Today, I am joined by a guy y'all may recognize, a viral sensation around here, Joshua Desha. Josh, how are you, man?
Man, I am alive and kicking. I'm happy to be here with you. I'm looking forward to it, buddy.
Yeah, man. Look, me too. We ended up talking on the phone about a day after that video caught fire.
Yeah.
And we've been trying to get together on our schedules, and we're both just really busy people, come to find out.
Got a lot of stuff going on, man. I know how it is, buddy. I work and family and everything in between.
Yeah. Like I say, I'm in the car business, and I know you're in the sales business also. And it's the businesses that require you to be there.
Yeah.
There's no workaround. I can't work from home in the car business, no matter what version of it I'm in, no matter what my responsibilities are there. So,
exactly.
Well, look, everybody, as y'all are tuning in, if you'll hit the share button on this, whether you're on YouTube, Periscope, Twitter, Facebook, whatever, this is going to be a good one tonight. We got about an hour with Joshua Desha, and we're going to make the most of it. Josh, so you live over there, like basically a suburb of Austin, which is Georgetown.
Yes.
And Austin is a lot like Jackson to the extent of it's a blue city in a red state. Mm-hmm. So, and then the suburbs, I imagine, are very conservative,
correct,
just like here. So it creates a unique, how do I say it, a conundrum, because you have all these policies in one area, and people move out of it because they don't like those policies. Mm-hmm. And then it leaves that area. And like I've seen Austin, it's dealing with a lot of homeless. Yep. At least nationally, that's what you see on the news is Austin has a major homeless problem. Whether it does or not, I do not know. Does it?
It's interesting. Right now, Austin does. The current mayor, Steve Adler, about a year and a half ago, allowed for the reduction of the camping bans. And it just... I think what you ended up having was cities all over the Southwest started sending their homeless to Austin. And it really did happen, whether it was paying for bus tickets or what have you. And, you feel for those individuals and you want them to be okay. But, man, I tell you what, there's nothing more dangerous for a city, nothing that hurts business more than having underpasses in these big metropolitan areas filled with tents. And we talk about people being humane to people who don't have much. That's about as inhumane, I think, as you can make it. But Austin has really struggled with that, and that's a shame. I grew up in Austin. I live in Georgetown, 20 minutes north of Austin, but I grew up in Austin. And Austin was a live music capital of the world. And yes, it's always been more of a liberal city, but it's been a beautiful city, and it's been vibrant. And, this homeless situation has really destroyed a lot of the uniqueness and the beauty of what is really a cool city to go to. So it's a shame.
Yeah, Jackson was a lot of the same way. That's the one positive thing to say a liberal center or Democrat type liberal city is the arts. You're just going to have more of that in a Democrat city than say a conservative city, traditionally anyway, with live music and art and all that good stuff. And that's why we were always drawn to Jackson. I owned a nightclub in Jackson for 15 years and all in about 18 or 19 in and around the capital city here. Mm-hmm. And the most success I ever had was absolutely in the capital city. But something happened, man, around 2008. It was always a little rough. There was areas, it just was what it was, but you worked around it. But something happened around 2008. I don't know if it was the national, the recession and all that stuff. But it went to hell quick and in a hurry around here. And it just spread. And the last the Mohicans started moving on out of Jackson. You have one really nice area here. Well, I say one. It's kind of concentrated. And I'm talking about inside Jackson proper here. And that would be Fondren, Belhaven, and what we call Eastover, Leftover. And it's kind of on the east side of the interstate there. But for the most part, all of Jackson is what you described in your video, which I guess is the point of this conversation in essence is when you were here for what, 2 or 3 days, something like that?
I was here for 3 days. I was in Jackson for 3.
So one of the main question I guess I have is what was like something there had to be a breaking point. There had to be like one thing that just pushed you over the edge enough to say, I got to talk about this. This is beyond what I've seen between Texas and everywhere else I've been. There's something that clicked outside of just potholes and abandoned buildings. What was that one thing, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah. So the night before, I'm trying to find some place to eat, right? And I'm at that hotel. By the way, again, like I said, the hotel was beautiful inside.
It's the King Edward. It's my nightclub. So you ate at American Deli. That's the spot I heard you talk about. Yeah. That was my restaurant, and above it was my nightclub.
Yeah.
So you actually retraced my footsteps there. And we used to urbex or urban exploration stuff in the old King Edward before they fixed it. I wish to God I could find all those videos and pictures now, because this was predated YouTube. But people would love to see that stuff.
It was pretty. I mean, again, I'd never been at a Hilton Garden Inn that was that ornate inside. It was nice. The problem is on the outside, like I said, it was. I had some people send me messages about how dangerous things were. I didn't see dangerous. I'm not saying it's not there. I didn't see that. What I saw, though, was just, again, I think I described it in there. It was like a nuclear bomb had hit that area. But you ask what kind of tipped me over the edge. I went to that American Deli and talked to a couple of the workers that were in there as I was getting food, because there was nowhere else to go. As you know, I mean, unless I wanted to get in my car and drive for 15 minutes over to Madison, there was nothing. And so, I walked down that way and walked in and they were super nice. And they were just talking about how things they don't know if things are ever going to get better. They thought that it was almost a hopeless area. And to me, that's sad. How I just, coming from Austin, again, with as, more of a Democrat lean, and Austin, obviously, keep Austin weird. I've never thought that Austin was outside of being saved, that there wasn't just a few things that could happen to make Austin that much better. But to hear people who were there, who, I sat in there for 20 minutes just talking to these individuals and hearing, and then walking out and having someone else talk to me. And all of a sudden it was like, okay, here's this guy. We can tell he doesn't belong here. I'm going to talk to him and lay my soul out to him. And it was this just almost like, again, there's nothing that can be done. And I've never seen that, especially it's a capital city. We're not talking about a suburb that's super poor. And that is, we're talking about a capital city. And yeah, I know that we've had issues like that in places like Detroit and other places. And it's sad to me that in a place like Jackson, Mississippi, the first time that I've gone there, I'm hitting potholes everywhere. Like I said, I'm seeing businesses or buildings that have been vacant for years, not just a couple of months, not since COVID, but for years. I have people that I'm talking to, super nice people, who just feel like there's nothing they can do. They're stuck. Their businesses are stuck. Their personal lives are stuck. To me, that was sad. And so as I was leaving, by the way, it was all that. Then I was leaving another giant freaking pothole that I ran into that I couldn't avoid. And I had it. And so I felt the need to get on there. And honestly, I think I told you this over the phone. I didn't expect anything from it. I just thought I would get on there and it'd be therapeutic. But I guess the internet gods had something else in mind.
That would be me. So I one question real quick before I tell you the story. Where, just out of curiosity, when you decided to hit not live or record, or however you went about doing the video, where were you? Were you still in Mississippi?
Yeah, I think I was almost to Vicksburg on I-20.
I thought I heard the concrete instead of asphalt.
Yeah, it was terrible.
I thought I recognized that sound.
But I'll say this: I've gone to Louisiana just about every year since I was 19. Northeast Louisiana. I have good friends in Monroe and West Monroe, and so I'm kind of used to the roads out that way. But this is the first time I'd ever come out that far east on 20 to Mississippi.
Man, look. It's like Stockholm syndrome here. We a lot of the people have learned to love their captor, their abuser. It's amazing to me. We have a general election coming up on Tuesday, and typically whoever wins the Democrat primary wins the mayor. I mean, there's rarely, I mean, probably never, honestly. Jackson's never had a Republican mayor, not through Civil War, pre-Civil War, rebuilding, any of that.
Yeah.
Never. I just learned the other day, and I've lived here my whole life. Well, I lived in California for, I say a year. My mom says it was 3 months. I can't really remember, but in 2001. Anyway.
Yeah.
Mississippi, the House of Representatives was under majority Democrat control in Mississippi until 2012.
Mm-hmm.
I had no clue. I went to an event the other night where the Speaker of the House, Philip Gunn, was speaking, and he brought that up, and I was like, "Good Lord, man! I had no idea." But where I'm getting off track there, I don't know. But the video that you did, and you were talking about what triggered it and where you were when you did it, and you talk about Jackson having no hope. And I think that's what a lot of people in Jackson saying they have no hope. And that's where we're at with it, man. I get to talking about it and I get so mad because I live here and I've been fighting this fight for years and years and years, as have the people. I see people in the comments here. I see people watching. When you feel like you're just going backwards, how can we begin to save anything if we're not through tearing it up yet? And that's my disgust with it. And I mean, for instance, you mentioned that where are the state and the local, or where are the local and the state politicians in this? Well, the state politicians have given the city a 1% sales tax. The only one other city in the whole state gets this 1% sales tax that strictly just goes to it. Mm-hmm. And that's Tupelo, which is one of the fastest growing cities in the state.
Right.
You know, and some of the mayors, Rankin County is probably the most successful county overall in the state from top to bottom.
Right.
Or at least in the Tri-County area anyway, with Pearl and Brandon and Florence and Richland and some of the areas around here. They have a thing called Rankin First where the mayors get together there and they have a meeting and stuff. And your video got brought up there. And inevitably it led to somebody tell Clay, if he talks to this guy, to tell him about the 1% sales tax. And the reason that the state is kind of fed up with giving Jackson money is it never goes to what it's supposed to go to. They're constantly spending money on consulting firms, and those consulting firms just so happen to be owned by the city council and the mayor's friends and all of that. You can imagine what direction that goes. Yeah. So it's a complete disaster here. People, of course, want the capital city to do well because you need here in the suburbs. And I just moved out of the Jackson city limits 2.5 months ago. Mm-hmm. I lived there, like I said, my whole life. It pained me to have to surrender, basically, and just throw my hands up. But we went 21 days without water in February. It started with an ice storm and just went to hell from there. The city was not prepared. They can blame it on whatever they want to blame it on. There was no preparation. There was no water in place for an emergency. They didn't have anything placed. It was a complete unmitigated disaster. And here we are. What is this? June 6th, D-Day. I had the picture up behind me there. I wanted to celebrate it or commemorate it, should I say. And the city of Jackson, over in the same area, over in South Jackson, where I came from, they're going into the 4th week without water again. Well, for without non-boilable, seriously low water pressure. Yeah. And people are just they're tired of it. And unfortunately, the people who vote around here aren't tired enough of it to vote for anybody different. And there's one guy that's got a real chance. Unfortunately, I just don't think, well, he's got a chance to fix it if he gets elected because he's a good person. Unfortunately, I don't think the people are going to get out and vote for him because, like I said, I think there's some kind of Stockholm syndrome going on around here.
Well, one of the things that I said in the video, and nothing got me in hot water. I don't give a crap. I don't live there anyway. But I think the one thing that people did respond to maybe more than anything was my desire for people to get out of. If you're in a hellhole, get out. If you have the ability to get out, get out. Well, and you have to. You know what? Again, it's funny. I'll say this stuff about Austin, and they're definitely not. They don't lean in the direction that I do politically. But one thing that I have respected about leadership in Austin is they will stand up and face the fire. You may not like what they say, and I may not like their solutions, but they will stand up. And if there's an issue, for the vast majority of the time I've lived there, which is 45 years, if something goes wrong, the city council, which I can't stand, the mayors, which I haven't been able to stand, if there's been something wrong, for the most part, people will take responsibility. One of the things that I noticed after this video, there was a couple of different interviews about the video, and I watched them. And on one of the stations, they talked to some people in the city, and people acknowledged that stuff that I had said was accurate and that they were trying to fix it. And then I saw this one where they asked the mayor about his impression, and I love this. And he had said, well, you know what? There's been more potholes fixed in the time I've been in office than in 10 years prior. And I remember just sitting back and going, that's the problem.
Yeah.
Because that's not taking responsibility. I almost said something that I shouldn't have said because you told me to keep it clean.
It's hard. That's why I started stuttering a minute ago, because I wanted to drop an F-bomb.
Look, here's the deal. I'm in business, and one of the biggest keys to success in business isn't the amount of money we have. It's not even really the talent. It's the ability for leaders to be leaders. And a leader will step up, and instead of saying, hey, he shouldn't look in our house for a couple of days because we've done more to fix potholes or what have you than the previous people did. Well, I don't give a crap. If the previous people were terrible, then why am I looking at myself and comparing myself to terrible? Because it's still just a lesser version of terrible. So you know what? Instead, maybe what we should do is stand up and say, hey, yeah, you know what? That's something we've got to fix, and we haven't done a good enough job on it. And you know what? Here's our plan for fixing potholes. To be quite frank, with the amount of money that comes in to all cities, when it comes to transportation, when it comes to infrastructure, fixing freaking potholes is not that hard. You and I, Clay, and you know this, we could go out and get some asphalt and go pick up and clean up potholes. Now,
we have a guy here that owns a t-shirt company. His name is Cheney. He's a local legend, has a shop in the Fondren area. He started fixing potholes himself a couple years ago, and leaving, like, he was planting flowers or something. I can't remember the exact details, but you go to your point. Anybody can go fix a damn pothole. That's your job. Do not. I'm not going to give you a cookie for doing the basics of your job.
Well, again, don't brag to. I'm good with people bragging about good accomplishments. You know what I mean? People don't like it, but you know what? Tell me this: there were 150 potholes up and down this particular avenue. We fixed them all. Awesome. But to tell me that, yeah, hey, it's a lot better than it used to be, but I know that I was on major thoroughfares and there were potholes and I'm having to swerve out of the way, almost hit people. Don't brag about that. And to me, look, there's nothing that great leadership can't start to fix. And so if you have great leaders, the first thing you do, right, is think about a business. So a new leader comes in and they say, we've got to fix this. Here are the issues. And here's what we're going to do to fix them. And here is the timeline we're going to do to fix them. And by the way, these politicians, I don't care whether they're local, statewide, or national, they have a finite amount of time between elections that they can say, hey, this is the time that we can fix this stuff. And so whether it's revamping downtown, whether it's the potholes or anything like that, I guarantee you that stuff could be fixed if the leaders wanted to. Because I know this, Austin, Texas, what do we have? I think 1 million in Austin proper and 2.5 million with the suburbs and everything. There's plenty of money to go around. There's plenty of money because we're being taxed out the wazoo for it. So you can fix these things if you actually want to, if you care about it. And that's what leadership does. And people that aren't leaders will sit there and make excuse after excuse after excuse for why they're not doing it, for why it's better than it used to be. I'm sorry. It's never going to get fixed, by the way, until people decide those kind of comments aren't enough. That's not good enough anymore.
No. If you run on the platform of fixing infrastructure and crime, you damn well better at least do something going in the right direction of fixing those. Last year, we had a record number of murders, 129 for Jackson. This year, we're tracking almost 150. I think we have 59, technically 60 as of today, but they figured out some loophole that if a murder happens in Jackson and the sheriff's department is investigating it, it doesn't count as a murder in Jackson. Beyond my thought process there, but neither here nor there. 59 or 60 is too many. I don't know what the number is, but you have to figure in that there would be an acceptable amount of murders. But 0 works, but you can't stop that.
Well,
But there's just outlaw culture here that's just absolute gun first, kill first, ask questions later. We had a 18-year-old girl graduate high school last Tuesday and got gunned down at a gas pump later that same day. We all went to a rally that Wednesday night. I mean, it's sad of an event I've ever been to in my life. And nobody seems to know anything. The cameras were turned a different direction. Nobody saw anything. The mayor didn't even show up for the thing.
Yeah.
You know, but what would him showing up do? But at the end of the day, it would have been a nice gesture.
But it's not about what necessarily it would do. It's about stepping up and being willing to face the fire over the organization or city that you are tasked with leading. And here in the comments said, potholes, give me a break. It starts with driving culture. Absolutely. I completely agree. And again, culture doesn't necessarily have to mean art galleries and the cultural things that maybe the left wants us to do. We're talking about culture from a standpoint of we've got to have a culture of responsibility. And are we taking responsibility for what we are charged with leading? And that starts with business owners, it's with individuals, and it's with our elected officials. The problem is, in most places, we will elect out the people who don't follow up with what they say they need to do. And it's sad to see that Jackson isn't following through on that. And it's funny too, we can blame in situations like this. I blame Austin residents for not getting rid of people who allow for camps to be there.
Amen.
And until we're willing to hold not only the politicians responsible, but people who vote for politicians who don't do good things, then nothing's going to get done.
Now we have this whole crew in Jackson that constantly says, and I have this as a promo on my radio show in my intro. It's like, they're like, positive solutions only. If you ain't got a positive solution, then you don't get to speak on it. I'm like, hold on. So if I don't have a fix for the problem, I'm not allowed to acknowledge there's a problem. I sell cars and talk crap on the radio for a living. Yep. I'm not a politician. It's we have to hold them accountable. More to my story here. They're like, you don't get to talk bad about these guys if you're not in their shoes. Oh yes, I do. That's exactly what I get to do. This is exactly what we should all do. I sit here and listen to, and I don't want to make this about national politics, but I sat here and listened to the same people telling me hashtag positive solutions only for the last 4 years when they had no problem bashing everything our most recent president had to do for the last 4 years. Like, hold on now. If you ain't got a positive solution, hashtag positive solutions only. And we're also, speaking of positive, Jackson, Mississippi is the #1 ranked city in America per capita for STDs.
It's ridiculous.
I mean, just to throw salt on the open wound of everything else around here, we get hit with that the other day. I'm like, is there anything in the city that we can hang our hats on? Is there anything this mayor can hang his hat on? And that's kind of been the whole foundation of this platform here. Is if you're going to tell me it takes more than 4 years to fix Jackson, we got to give him 4 more. Well, what is the one thing that he's done that we can hang our hat on? Say, you know what, that's going in the right direction, and I'm willing to overlook all this other because he's building a good foundation, and people might not see it. And I don't see it. I don't see a single thing this dude can hang his hat on except he did his job at the very basic level. You know, I got tuned up at work the other day by my boss and said I was focusing too much on this and not enough on work. Mm-hmm. And he was 100% right. And I've been saying it for a couple of months now. Every now and then you got to get tuned up, whether it be by your constituents, your employer, your wife, your husband, whomever it is. And typically when you get tuned up, if you're a hard worker, a good person, you take that, you absorb it, and you say, okay, you know what? They're right. Let me take a look in the mirror. I've been trying to tune this guy up for the last 2 years, and it just keeps getting worse and worse. All I want to see is a positive change, hashtag positive solutions only. I just want to see something positive. You know, are the schools getting better? Is our water getting better? Are our roads getting better? None of this stuff is getting better. Are more jobs coming to the city? No, they're leaving it. Or there's still a mask policy. You still got to wear a face mask in Jackson, which I don't. But theoretically, he won't lift it.
Mm-hmm. Again, leadership is hard. And if you're going to be tasked with leading something, a business, a city, a family, you have no choice but to be a good leader or to get out.
Yep.
And so, again, I don't know, maybe it's just me. If I knew that I sucked at my job, and by the way, you're right, and some people are right. Maybe certain things do take longer than 4 years, but you made a good point there, and it's not even really that brilliant of a point, right? It's pretty much common sense. Just show something that we're getting better at it. Think about, I love football. Think about football. Halfway through a game, if the quarterback is 0 for 10, we're going to replace him at halftime. And we're going to put someone else in for the last 2 quarters to make sure that we get the job done. At a certain point, I have another couple of quarters isn't enough. Give me another 4 years. Okay. Again, show me something on the field. And it's the same thing in business. And again, if we were willing to hold people accountable the way that we hold celebrities accountable for not being dumb idiots on idiots on TV, if we were willing to hold politicians accountable the way that we hold CEOs accountable for not having the right kind of profit and not hiring the right kind of people, then maybe we'd be a little bit better. But it seems to me like there is a double standard when it comes to our elected officials. One of the guys in Austin, I love what he says. He calls them our political heroes, very sarcastically. We tend to idolize politicians like no one else.
Yeah, there's a guy that has a radio show that comes on after mine on the same station, Mike Madison, and he mentions that too. He's very libertarian. I mean, he hates both sides equally, and he's like, this political worship phase that we're going through, where we worship these politicians instead of hold them accountable, is going to end up being the death of this country. Yeah.
Well, and by the way, I grew up in a very liberal house. Was a Democrat my very first, unfortunately, and people will throw eggs at me. My very first vote was for Bill Clinton. I became a Christian at 19. I started voting more on a one-issue basis, as most of us would, abortion and being against abortion.
That's my line in the sand. I got a lot of gray area. That's the one I don't have any in.
And that's the reason I've had a hard time being a libertarian. But on just about everything, I'm a libertarian in that regard, because I mean I got in trouble with a lot of my friends for speaking out against things that I thought were stupid that Trump did. I don't give a crap about that stuff. I want true conservative values that allow me to understand a couple of things. One, we're going to take responsibility for the things that we do or we don't do. We're going to be responsible for money. We're going to hold people accountable when they don't use money the right way. We are going to hold people accountable when they say, hey, I'm a Christian, yet they go out and publicly do things that make us look bad. And then what am I going to do? I'm going to hold myself accountable more than anyone, and I'm going to treat people the right way. And you know what the best way we can treat people when it comes to politically is we can do what we freaking say we're going to do. And we can use the tax dollars that are way too high. We can use the tax dollars coming in and actually do things that are good and that help individuals instead of giving out handouts. And if we would do that, imagine the roads that would be fixed. Imagine the businesses that could stay open because they had less of a tax burden and that they could actually do things. And instead, cities like Jackson or smaller rural communities in Texas or any state, you end up having this devastation that comes from a lack of ability of our elected officials to take personal responsibility for the job they have.
Amen, dude. I wish I had a lot to add to that, but you pretty much hit the nail on the head there. It's just accountability. You mentioned when somebody takes over a business and has to come in and kind of clean up the mess of their predecessor. Been in the car business for 11 years now. If there's one thing consistent about the car business, is nothing's consistent. Mm-hmm. There's always change. If you can't handle change, avoid the car business. And I've seen so many guys come in. There's a house cleaning. I've been part of a house cleaning before, on both sides of it. Mm-hmm. And the one thing you have to do is you have to come in and detach yourself from anything personally. Just look at the numbers and say, are you doing your job? Why are you not doing this? You got X amount of time to fix it, or we don't think this is fixable. You have to go. It's just easier to start over from scratch versus having to retrain somebody to do their job.
Yeah,
and that's where we're at politically. It's time to stay here and say, you know what, guys, you've had 4 years on any other resume for any other line of work. If this is what you're putting on it after 4 years, or not a resume, but a job evaluation. After 4 years, every statistical category has gotten worse. You have to go. You don't get to retain your position. Period. So it blows my mind that we do this over and over, and it was especially in conservatives. I will give conservatives this: you got 4 years or you're out. Typically, traditionally, from what I can tell, we do not give you too many chances to prove that you can't do it. There's not it's not a black thing, it's not a white thing. It's just straight up, can you do the damn job? And for whatever reason, with Democrats, there seems to be this. It's got to be somebody else's fault because it can't be his. He's one of us.
Yeah. Well, and by the way, to that point, someone here in the comments also mentions that state government is no more trustworthy. And I can't speak to that because I don't know Mississippi that well. But I would say this, to your point: if you can't get state officials who can do what they say they're going to do, if you can't get them to hold taxes down and to take care of money the right way and to lead the state the way they need to be elected out. It's the same thing from a city standpoint, a state standpoint, federally. Look,
our governor is going to be a one-term governor. He torched the conservative his base during COVID. He will be a one-term governor, assuming he's primaried by the right people. Right. So to your point,
yeah. I mean, and it's funny you're talking about the car business. If you have a dealership and they need a new director of the service department because it's a mess, you're going to get a certain amount of time, and I guarantee you, after 6 months, they can't go into the dealer principal and say, "Hey, I'm sorry that we're still way in the red, but I'm doing a lot better than that previous guy," right? No, that doesn't work. It doesn't work that way. And again, it's because we understand that there's a process and a way for things to work, and there really is for everything. That's why you see certain businesses are always successful, because they have a process, and the process starts with accountability. The process starts with understanding finance. The process starts with understanding where the problems are and what's the best way to solve them. And you meticulously go through each, understanding budgeting, understanding people, understanding relationships, and then understanding who you are as a leader. And in a dealership, that wouldn't work. In my line of business, in the insurance business, I've been in insurance for well over a decade. It doesn't work. It shouldn't work in politics. So, to that guy's, point about the state, I would say if they're not doing what they say they're going to do, and if lives aren't getting better, if taxes aren't going down and jobs aren't going up, then get rid of them and get someone else in there. I don't care who it is, Republican or Democrat. Get people in there who will take accountability.
That's what I'm saying. At this point in the game, we just need to see some change. I don't believe that when you're at this point, you can't keep going down the same road. There's not enough people you can get on your team. There's got to be wholesale changes. And I don't care if we lose a year while people are getting there, learning how to do their job, finding out where the bathroom is at City Hall. The city can't afford to lose another 4 years. Another 4 years going down this path, it's irredeemable. And I know I say that, and then you look at somewhere like, say, a Detroit back in the late 90s, early 2000s, it was rock bottom. I mean, it had to file bankruptcy. We all know Detroit's problems, and they found a way to come back. But what Detroit has that clearly we do not hear is industry. Even I know the car industry is taking a big hit, but you still have the history and the industry there to revive that. We don't have that. They have infrastructure too, by the way. Something we barely have here. And when I say here, I'm strictly referring to Jackson, because the suburbs don't have these problems. Yeah. They've taken care of themselves enough over the years that their residents have water.
Yeah, but here's what I'll say real quick about that. You say there's no industry. The reason you don't have industry is you have people like myself driving in and smashing their cars in potholes bigger than the holes on the moon. And they're walking into a downtown area. Look, it may sound trite, but first impressions matter. And I drive through Vicksburg, and I know that that's a different situation with casinos and all that kind of stuff. But you drive through Vicksburg, you come into Jackson, and immediately you're hit by homelessness, you're hit by poverty, you're hit by a downtown area that is all boarded up. of course, there's no industry. You get the get the illusion of success at least out there. Open up businesses down there. Get people to move in. Fix the streets, and industry will come. You just have to have leadership that's strong enough to fix those things and show people why a city like Jackson is on the rise. All a business wants and all an industry wants is to know that they're not coming into a sinking ship. Show them that the ship is fixed, and industry will start to come.
Yeah, you're 100% right about that. And to circle back to your stay here, you mentioned that you didn't see the crime down there where you were at.
Yeah. That
downtown area, traditionally, just based on the lack of population after 5 p.m., has always had the lowest crime in the city. Mm-hmm. It's because there's not a whole lot down there. Where they're gonna rob an office building, Yeah. So not much down there. But man, you get, well, if you'd walked out the front doors of the King Edward and gone left, mm-hmm. we might not be having this interview right now.
Yeah.
So it doesn't take far, but that one area you're in, that's what we always refer to that as the downtown business district. Mm-hmm. But they're losing a lot of they've even built a couple of new buildings down there and stuff over the last few years. I'm not 100% sure based on the occupancy down there, but neither here nor there. They've lost a lot of businesses to Madison, to Rankin County, to these areas that are blowing up and don't have the crime. Jackson has all the pitfalls, but none of the, what's the one thing? You sit here and say, if you're a business, if I'm going to open up a business here, I brought this up the other day, and of course, you can't say these things without being a hater or a racist and all this other stuff, when I just feel like I'm being a realist. If I'm going to invest $1 million opening a business, mm-hmm. am I going to do it where there may not be water for a month, or am I going to go literally 5 minutes down the road and invest the same money and not have to deal with that, not have to worry about, especially if I'm a front-facing business that requires foot traffic. Mm-hmm. Why in God's name? There's no upside to Jackson, the trendy, the cool, the keep Austin weird. There's none of that here. Yeah. Jackson's got to retrieve its identity or decide what its identity is going to be, and hold on to it, because you're getting to that point where there's no upside at all to coming to Jackson when you can go down to Flowwood, Pearl, wherever,
Wow. Well, I do know this. I mean, outside of all the empty buildings, you can tell there's rich history down there, and people will come for history as long as, like you said, there's foot traffic and there's other business happening. What's going to take? It's going to take some of the community coming together and deciding we're going to do business down in Jackson. And what's going to take from there is politicians are going to have to help make it safe. They're going to have to, help with some of the infrastructure, which I'm assuming that the city has gotten millions of dollars from a standpoint of funding for infrastructure like everyone else has. It's just been misused. Sure. Someone can tell me if that's different, but there are reasons for being down there. Again, I walked around down there, and there's some really cool buildings, and you can see there's rich history down there. So if we can figure out, in a place like Jackson, how do you accentuate that? How do you get a couple of businesses to come down, and how do you get the community rallying together to want to go down there?
No, look, there's a ton. There's museums. There is stuff. I mean, look, when I knock Jackson, I'm not knocking the businesses and stuff that are here. So the people out there listening right now, if you own a business in Jackson, I love you. God bless you. Like you said in the video, there's a lot of great people around here, mm-hmm. and I know that when you sit here and you bash a city, that outsiders can say, well, why in the hell would I ever go there if these guys are sitting here talking about it? But man, we have to acknowledge these things, and we have to figure out a way to fix them. And I didn't bring you on here to tell everybody not to vote for anybody, but I'm going to say it. Tuesday, when the polls come around, or when the elections polls open up, whatever, if you're watching this and you live in the city limits of Jackson and you have the opportunity to go vote for some change, go vote for some change. And that's all I want to say about that. But you got to start there. Otherwise, I don't want to hear anybody coming on here for the next 4 years talking about anything that voted for the same guy again.
Yeah. I mean, the only other thing I could say is just repeating what we started saying before about accountability and leadership.
Yep.
And all of this, that's really what's needed.
So let's decompress for a sec, kind of cleanse our palate here. Your video.
Yeah.
So I woke up one Sunday morning, and I guess you had just posted it maybe the evening prior or maybe that morning. As always, I come in on Sundays. It's my one day that I get to sleep in a little bit. And by sleep in, I mean not wake up at 5.
Yeah.
And I drink some coffee and I go to YouTube. I just hit search and I type in Jackson, Mississippi. I'm like, let's see what let's see if anybody's drunk posted anything crazy from the night before. Kind of like I used to look on MySpace back in the day. It's like, oh, a Sunday morning, like let's see what's happened before anybody's wakes up and regrets what they posted. So I still do that, but with YouTube and Jackson. And I ran across your video. And I think it had about 5 or 6 views, at least according to my Roku behind me here.
Yeah, there wasn't much.
And I was like, I'm going to share. I watched the whole thing first, and I'll just hit share. I'm guilty of sharing without reading the whole article. But I was like, let me read this or listen to this. And I was on the treadmill. I wasn't drinking coffee, and I damn near fell off because you said exactly what I've been saying for the last, since I started this platform. We'll just start there. I've been saying this for the last 20 years, but publicly as SaveJXN, I've been saying this for the last 2. You hit the nail on the head on everything. I was like, I want somebody else to hear this from an outsider, somebody with an unbiased opinion about what they see. So people can understand that when people come through Jackson, this is their impression of what they see here. Mm-hmm. And so, long story short, I shared it on social media. It started blowing up. And next thing I know, they're talking about it on the news. And then, of course, everybody's sending it back to me thinking I hadn't seen it yet. And that's when I reached out to you, whether it was on YouTube or LinkedIn or however it was. And you called me like, man, the news channels have called me. And then I start seeing press conferences with the mayors and the city council and all these people. I'm like, guys, I've been doing this, which I was proud somebody finally, I didn't care who the messenger was.
Yeah.
I'm just glad that somebody else got through, broke the seal, and people heard it and had to respond to it. And I'm proud of our press because they've had their heads shoved so far up the mayor's butt that I don't know how they pulled it out far enough to watch a video. But they even had to ask him a question about it at a press conference. Mm-hmm. And that's when he came up with and then he had that classic line of, and I even played this on my radio show the other day, about, well, I'm sure if I peeked in his house for just a minute, I could nitpick a few things. I'm like, you don't have to peek in here. I can ride through any Democrat hellhole in the country and tell you in 2 seconds it's a Democrat hellhole and exactly what's wrong with it. I don't need to stay for overnight. I don't need to stay 2 days. I don't need to stay 3 days. I don't need to peek in for 45 minutes. I can ride through and tell you what the problems are. Yeah. And it's no accountability at the end of the day. Zero accountability. And who can we blame this on while we still cash our paychecks?
I can't tell you about Jackson again because, like your mayor said, I was just peeking in. I can tell you this: where I am, we vote people out who don't do what they say they're going to do. And now look,
positive solutions only.
Positive solutions only. And you know what? Here's the positive solution: vote them out.
Yeah.
I mean, for me again, we can. By the way, for him, we can only hold him so much accountable, right? At a certain point, it's just like where I am. We had a mayor that was in Georgetown before. He was a very popular mayor. He was getting tons of press all over the country for, making Georgetown, Texas, the first totally 100% green city. And what happened over a 4 or 5 year span? The electric rates went through the freaking roof. Energy rates went nuts. And whether you like green energy or not, that's not the point. The point was the guy went out and did this without asking. He went and got a ton of publicity, which was good for him. Initially, it was good. But you know what happened? Eventually, those rates went through the roof and he had no answers. So we held him accountable as voters. And whether people liked him or not didn't matter. And it was Democrats and Republicans. People who were conservative and liberal voted this guy out.
Hey, let me ask this about that.
Yeah.
Were you guys affected during, y'all caught the same ice storm we did in February?
It was terrible.
Was the green energy the reason you guys lost your power, or was it just because of the ice storm? Because, nationally, which is the news that I get for Texas is from a national perspective, is, it was people were blaming it on the power grid and Ted Cruz and Republicans and all this, that, and the other. But y'all's power grid is very separated. There's some of it's private, some of it's public, or however that works.
I'm laughing because people were blaming Ted Cruz because he decided to get out of town, which always kind of cracked me up. Anybody at that point who had the means to leave would have freaking left.
If anybody who went and stayed in a hotel because they had power, if you did that, you did the same thing Ted Cruz did. So I don't want to hear anything about that.
And by the way, I'm not a huge Ted Cruz fan, but I would have done the same freaking thing if I could have. No, it wasn't the green energy. Actually, the grid for Texas is a little bit interesting. They, we deregulated, which by the way was a good thing. But in the deregulated atmosphere, that they brought in kind of more of a board who makes decisions based upon a lot of the Texas stuff. And we had the ability to buy energy from some different places, namely Oklahoma, which didn't happen. And let's be real, it's really hard. And I'm going to give the politicians, both Democrats and Republicans, a little bit of a break. It's kind of hard to I don't know, get ready for something that's never happened. I mean, you're talking about the state of Texas. It's right now in Texas, it's already 90, 95 degrees. I mean, y'all know what that's like in Mississippi. How do you get used to or get ready for 10-degree weather and everything being frozen over and, pipes bursting? You just can't. Now, I'll say this.
Well, that was the same thing we dealt with here in Jackson. And that was my angst was there was just no preparation. And look, we knew that it was a ticking time bomb, that if that ever happened, it was going to wreak hell on our water supply. My angst were that there was not a pile of bottled water, that we didn't have trucks in place. That there were no systems in place until after the ice melted enough for people to get out and then start preparing. When the state had offered things, I could go on and on. We could do a whole show about it, but anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just wanted to chime in there.
I'll say this, Clay. In our situation, in 2 weeks, it was done. And we had water back, and people, maybe it may have been 3 weeks, and then finally people had water, but we're not still dealing with it like some people in Mississippi are, or in Jackson. You said that I was reading that there are still some places that don't have water. That's ridiculous.
And it's unrelated to the ice storm.
But it may be unrelated, right? But
which makes it even worse.
That's right. And so for ours, I mean, could there have been some planning ahead of time? Yes. But what I kind of like about our area was that it happened. It was up quickly, so we weren't out for very long. And then once that was happened, they're putting plans in place for the freak occurrence that it should ever happen again. So when you see that, I'm okay with it, right? Because I don't necessarily expect our politicians and elected officials to get everything right the first time. There are going to be things that come up, but what are you doing afterward? One, to take accountability for what happened. There's that accountability word again. And then two, are you now putting plans in place to ensure that it doesn't happen again? To me, that's all I care about. Someone just said, hey, did I hear Clay Edwards for mayor? Hey, there you go.
People have been saying it for a while, but I moved out of the city, but it goes back to the same problem that the people running Tuesday are going to have, is the opposition to the current mayor is not black and a Democrat. I hate to make things about race, but at the end of the day, that's all I keep hearing is that sometimes being black is more important than being right. And that's the problem we have in the city, but I don't want to drag you into that mess.
Well, but
to answer the question from Kane there about Clay Edwards for mayor, unfortunately, in the city of Jackson, being black is more important than being right. So they're not going to vote for me.
But you know what? And maybe they wouldn't. But I do know this: there are plenty of white, black, Hispanic, Asian who want good things to happen and who are smart and intelligent and just want something good to happen for their family and for their community and for their kids and for their kids' kids. And so then again, it goes back to the people of Jackson who understand when something isn't going well. And for them to look at that and say, you know what, I don't care if this guy is white, black, Asian.
Did we lose you? We'll let Joshua's internet or signal catch back up there, and I'll carry this until he chimes back in. Tuesday, June 8th, if you live in Jackson, that's this Tuesday, you need to get out and vote. I'm just telling you straight up. I see Les Tannehill in the room here. All right, looks like we got Josh back. Let me pull him back in.
That's all right. That YouTube did the same thing to my video. They got rid of me too.
Josh, we're still, for some reason, don't have you on the screen here.
I'm here.
I see you.
Oh, okay.
The screen. Let me try one more thing here. Hey man, live TV. Let's try it again here.
Can you hear me now?
Josh, if you want to log out and log back in,
Yep.
maybe we can get it, but you're not showing up on the dual screen here. Let him do that. June 8th. I see Les Tannehill in the room. I don't know if Charlotte Reeves is in here or not, but I know Les is, and I think Les is the guy and that we need to have. That's just my opinion on it. I don't live in Jackson. I don't have no say-so in the matter. All right, Josh, I see you there.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yeah, my wife was pointing at me through the room. She's like, he's on there. I'm like, but he's not on my screen, and I can't hear him. That's all. Unfortunately, that's all that matters in this situation.
And all I did then was make a snide comment about YouTube. YouTube took my video down. So, and it was funny too. Here's what happened. I also had people coming to me saying, no, dude, it's private. I said, no, man, it's gone. It's not there. I don't know what happened to my video. And actually, there was a couple of news people who had wanted to use it. And I said, yeah, go ahead. And then they were messaging me saying, hey, can you give it back to me? Why'd you take it down? I didn't. So anyway.
That's interesting. You know, I have a copy of it. I ripped a copy before I ever talked to you. I said, this ain't going to last long as the crazies catch up with him. I said, I want a copy of this. But after our conversation, and being a fellow YouTuber or whatever you want to call it, content creator, I was like, I'm not going to repost this guy's content, but I did want a copy of it so I could go back and listen like I use it to prep for this video, this interview today.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, I'm guessing that at some point with their algorithm, if enough people complain about it, they don't even fight it anymore. They just take it down and tell you to deal with it.
Probably so. And that's fine. I think it got, obviously it was up there long enough to ruffle some feathers.
I've never seen a single, I had a video go viral around here, locally viral, about all the abandoned buildings in Jackson. And that I'd been doing this platform for a solid 2 years almost before this video hit. And I just said, I'm going to get into the video thing. And I just made a bunch of still photos of all the abandoned properties and narrated it. Not no actual video footage, but it ended up like 50,000 views overnight, and it's up to about 250,000 here on Facebook and 50,000 or so on YouTube, and that's kind of what broadened my fan base or hate base or whatever you want to call it. And because I called out one of the biggest problems we have here in the city, obviously, is abandoned property, and the cause of the abandoned property is up for debate. Long story short, it's abandoned, and churches are ending up with it. So two things are happening. It's off the tax rolls, and they're not doing anything with it. It's just an abandoned property owned by a church, so they don't have to pay taxes on it. And again, they just sit here and they tell you they're going to do all these great things with it, but they never do. What they're, in my opinion, and they're talking about a long-term play, is they're waiting on some form of gentrification and for that property to be worth more than the building on it is. And it's a real pain in my ass because, and there's my cuss word for the day, because I think I can say that on the radio.
I think you can.
But hey, look, Josh, I know we're winding down here, man. I appreciate your time.
Absolutely.
Real quick, in closing, explain to people if they want to follow you on social media anywhere, whether it's LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, whatever, how can they find you?
So, yeah, you initially reached out to me on LinkedIn, and I'd love for you to connect with me there if you have it. I'm on LinkedIn. Just search Joshua W. Desha, Desha. A lot of you have already subscribed to my YouTube channel. I appreciate it. The vast majority of what I talk about on social media, especially on LinkedIn, is leadership, business, sales. Every once in a while, I'll spout off about something like this, but for the most part, it's leadership, accountability, everything you've heard me talk about today. So if you are on LinkedIn, I would love to connect with you. And if you're on YouTube, I'd love to have you subscribe to my channel.
All right, brother. Look, man, I appreciate you chiming in. Anytime you want to talk, holler at me. We'd love to have you guys. I'm going to stay on for a few minutes after Josh jumps out. We appreciate